Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and yes, some of those failures that make legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome John Mix, CEO and co-founder of FINIS Incorporated. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, FINIS, where did the name come from?
The co-founder and I went to a private Jesuit all-boys school in San Jose, and there was a little bit of Latin, with the Jesuits. So you learn a little bit of Latin, and when it came time to pick a name, we thought back and said, that the word finis in Latin means this is it, the end. And there was understanding that first product we were going to work on was going to be a fin. It was one of 5 names we wrote down. And back 33 years ago, the way you would incorporate a name in the state of California, you actually had to write the names down and, mail it in a physical envelope to the state of California and say, these are our top 5 choices. When the thing came back, 4 of them were scratched out. And the only one circled was Finis. They said, you can have this one.
That's funny.
So kind of a quick path that let us move on.
So 30 years.
Yeah.
Have you been celebrating along the way? Celebrate each decade, celebrate every handful of years? Tell me about the journey.
Neither Pablo or I quit our day jobs until we were a good 4 years into the business. So when we started the company, it was intended to be a hobby. It was going to be a side hustle, something that was maybe more fun than what we were doing out in the real world.
Yeah.
And as it progressed, we started to see the impact we were having with coaches and swimmers and that swimming community, and it became more fun than our day jobs. The proof was out. We had 5 employees and we decided, I think I'd like to try and make the leap. So, I know this is about living legacy and lessons learned. Well, I'll tell everyone, I jumped probably 2 years too early because when you think you have it all figured out, when you think you can do it, you should probably dig in a little bit longer and make sure you can do it. So, all the savings went away and the nice car went away and the restaurant dinners went away because we needed all of that and then some for those first couple years. So I became poor.
That's not such a bad thing, right? Especially at the start, it keeps you hungry that way. If you have if all the cars and the dinners and everything is already paid for, sometimes you don't have that hunger. Right.
Yeah, I do agree. I lessons learned too, when you see people working with other people's money, they're quite frivolous. And when you are working with your own money as that investment, you have to make smart choices. And we continue to do it. And, at the end of, those 2 years, what we found is what was that scalable point? What do we need to do so that we can live a normal life and actually call this a business? So, I guess at the same time, jumping in too early meant I dove into the trenches, and it does take that.
Well, as I tell my clients, I say your boat will come in, it just doesn't come all the way to the shore.
Yeah.
So saying that you jumped is exactly what you need, right? At some point, you have to take a chance of letting go of the security of the day job, the security of whatever it is that's holding you where you are, and make the leap. And so it turns out it was a pretty good thing you guys did.
Yeah. Well, today I like to tell people we have a nice medium-sized company. We have a customer base that brings our brand out to the world. And as a medium-sized company, I know everyone in the company, and I know most of our customers outside the company, because their customers are the ones that I won't know, but we have to build a brand that allows our customers to be an extension of us in the community. So
Yep.
that has worked well for us.
So let's talk about that a little bit because that's an important distinction that not a lot of the previous guests on this pod have had. So I want to talk about that. You're not direct to consumer per se. You do a lot of stuff through retail and retailers and dealers and that kind of stuff. Tell me about those relationships and how you foster those yet appeal to the end customer at the same time.
The best example I would say, if you're somebody residing in the United States, is we all know our local hardware store is often called an Ace hardware store.
Sure.
And the Ace hardware store is a smaller footprint. And when you go there with a problem, chances are somebody's going to be there to speak to you specifically about it. They're going to bring you to a department. They're going to show you a couple options as to how to solve that problem.
Yep.
And so everyone's comfortable to go there. We have the bigger hardware stores, of course, where if it's as simple as heading over to aisle 105 and you look for what you're looking for and you understand it, you might get a cheaper price down the road, but you're not going to get any professional customer service, I think. So having that customer experience at the Ace hardware is something that we try and replicate in our business. We like to think that the accounts that we set up, we have a number of people that'll ask us, we'd like to have an account with you. And our responses help us understand your business a little bit better so we can see how the fit might be. So it's not an open door. There's no need to open up everybody. There are some businesses that are more niche. There's the bike shop that also caters to triathletes. And in the triathlete segment, there's only a slice of the products that are appropriate for them. And there's the swim schools that cater to teaching children, call it 3 to 5, 6 years old is their major marketplace. And that is a slice of our business who we are catering to the owners of the swim school, the instructors who educate from the swim school. And yet we're also having a touch point with the children at an early age, the parents and the grandparents. So how do we build that relationship that I'd like to think of ourselves as much of a educational company as a product company. We make products, but we work with our customers to understand how to use them, why to use them. And the prime example being a swim school. The revenue center of a swim school is teaching lessons. So our product is only to serve as an opportunity to make sure that the customer experience is really good.
Right.
If they have a really good customer experience, then their retention of their business is going to grow. So I think that's different than stepping in and saying to the swim school, we make products, do you want to sell them? That's not the approach.
Okay. I like it. So at what point then did you kind of feel that in your company where you and Pablo kind of looked at each other and say, we're not a products company. We're not a CPG company. We are an education company, and this is how we're going to market ourselves. When did that kind of hit for you?
I would have to say we were at least a dozen years into the business. Because it wasn't intentional. I think, again, thinking to that Ace hardware relationship, everything we ever built was built for a very specific purpose. So to the listeners out there, we are a company that produces products used in the industry of swimming. And unique to swimming is it's something that if you are, if you had that opportunity to learn how to swim as a child, if you learn to swim where you enjoy it, if you learn to swim with good technique, then there's nothing preventing you from swimming your entire life. It's just like walking. We can walk as long as our legs are working.
Yeah.
And in swimming, as long as we're enjoying being in the water, if you are doing it with good technique, you don't get hurt. If you're doing it with good technique, it's not hard. So those when we watch people out there that are swimming, a lot of those people that are out there swimming, they've found that that glide that other people get walking. It's not hard. You just have to do the technique right. So going back to education versus product, with each product that we've developed, we're kind of looking at the foundation of swimming. What is it that people have a hard time understanding? Because it is a little bit complicated. You're moving your arms and legs in different directions. You're rotating your head to take a breath. You want to keep your hips on the surface. There's all these components that you could say, wow, swimming is hard. There's a lot to be learned here. But if you build the right foundation, then you can swim well. So that would be our approach to working with our core customers is let's make sure they understand why we're doing what we do and how it applies to their customer. So when their customer comes in that says, I have this problem, if they simply say, I'm looking for a pair of swim goggles, the question should be, what have you found that has worked or doesn't work for you in the past?
Well, and I think, it's important for our listeners to understand you're not just a layman that's throwing out education on how to swim. You've got a bit of a background in swimming.
Yes.
Tell us about that background.
As a person who grew up in California, I fell in love with the sport of water polo at I was probably 11 or 12 years old. So I continued to swim until I went to college where I played water polo. But the purpose of my swimming was to be a better water polo player. But in the lane next to me was filled with swimmers that were really embracing, I want to be a great swimmer and a great water polo player. And my co-founder, Pablo, went on to, at 18 years old, he swam at the LA Olympics in 84. In 88, he was the winningest collegiate swimmer in the history of time.
Wow.
He swam for Stanford. He didn't lose a race during NCAAs. He had 13 individual titles, NCAA titles. But he didn't rest before the Olympic trials of 88 because he was the number one guy in the world in a couple of events. And he got third in all three events. So Pablo did not go to the Olympics in 88. Pablo came back and he got himself 2 more gold medals at the 92 Olympics.
Wow.
So Pablo was one of those kids that I grew up with who really embraced swimming. So in building the company and making my way back to the pool where it was no longer being in the pool to swim to be a better water polo player, but being in the pool because I knew it was a place of happiness, I too started to realize how pleasant it was just to swim. And then to also start to notice if I can improve my technique, I'm going to enjoy it more. So it wasn't about getting faster for me. It was improve my technique to make it easier, improve my technique to make it more enjoyable. And those lingering questions with other friends that I grew up with, like Pablo, they lended themselves to the first questions that says, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? And the aha moment, Pablo and I said, you know what? Here's the fastest guy in the world, Pablo, and he wasn't aware of something that was being used in Europe for a whole different sport. So that was the premise of starting the company. Is I was aware of it. I brought one home. I used it, and when I showed, his first reaction to the monofin. The monofin is a product where both feet are part of the same, and it turns you into like a underwater dolphin. And that's the technique used in butterfly, and that's what Pablo was a champion at.
Mm.
And when Pablo used this monofin for the first time, his first reaction was, "This is really fun." And I'm thinking, well, gosh, that's a benefit. Fun is
Yeah.
a benefit. And then he went and he kicked on his side, and he said, people often wondered, how did I develop power in both directions of my kick? And it's pretty hard to explain. But when you put the monofin on, you can actually feel it. What a
Yeah.
great product. And I'm like, okay, wait, it's fun and it teaches you something.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I said, why don't we start a company? And we'll call it a hobby. We'll just let's make these things. Let's do things for this world of swimming. And that was how we started in February
And
of '93.
that's where the passion came from, right?
Yeah.
And and you can feel it through your story, of course, but it's just for a company to last that long, there's more behind it than just generating profit, right? Because I'm sure, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of these over the course of the conversation, it wasn't all an uphill ride, and it wasn't all a downhill ride. There's a lot of ups and downs and a little bit of everything in there. Talk to us about a couple of those successes. Where did you kind of hit your peak over the course of the last 30 plus years? Are you there now? Did you kind of hit it earlier? What was the ride like for you?
There's the second product we brought to market was a front-mounted snorkel. It goes in front of your face. And when we brought that product to market, it again something I had seen in Europe in this sport called fin swimming. And I again looking at Pablo as the Olympic champion, says Pablo,
Sure.
wouldn't this add value if we were using it for swimming? And Pablo acknowledged that, and some of the great coaches around the U.S. also acknowledged that we built the first product by bending sprinkler tubes and putting a mouthpiece on it
Yeah.
and finding a way to attach it to the forehead. And we said, let's test the market. And before we knew it, we were selling thousands of bent sprinkler tubes.
And sprinkler tubes.
Yeah. So we went on to we patented the product, and we had a nice 20-year run where everyone in the world was buying and using our snorkel. Now, to the audience, you say, well, wait, if you're a swimmer, why do you use a snorkel? Fast forward, why do I call it a statement product? When the patent expired, today, every swimming brand in the world has a version of our original snorkel. They all made one very similar to that original model. I take that as a compliment.
Yep.
Did it eat into our market share? Most certainly. Did they stay a little bit too close to the original version? Probably, because we took 20 years of feedback on that product.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else came out with a virtual copy of it. We made something different and better. And it's noticeably better than the other ones. And
Sure.
it's patented again. But so this snorkel, the reason why it applies to both the world of if you swim for health and wellness or if you swim on a swim team. Even there was a period where when they would choose the U.S. Olympic team, we would send 2 snorkels for every swimmer to travel with to the Olympic Games. And here you're thinking, well, wait, why 2?
Yes. Why two?
And these guys are already so good. And one of the coaches said to me, John, some of these athletes are young and some of these athletes are forgetful. And should they forget it at training camp, we want to be able to tell them, go back to your room and get the other one. Now, they're trying to perfect perfection. So what it can do for the average swimmer is even significantly more. What it does is it allows you to relax the tension between your neck, back, and spine. it eliminates the need to rotate your head to take the breath, because swimming is about rhythm and symmetry.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can keep my head in position and I can get rhythm and symmetry working, um, it encourages better body balance. It allows me to get my hips up higher on the surface. The number one reason why people stop swimming is because they swim uphill. Because when most people take a breath of air, they, instead of leaning down, they lean across. And when they lean across, the hips sink.
Yep.
The hips sink with every breath. Then you would imagine that people are going to the pool, and just like if we were to go walking, if every day I said, hey, let's walk uphill, and you never had a chance to walk downhill or on even pavement, there would come a time you'd say, you know what? This walking uphill is kind of wearing me out. I'm done.
Sure.
Well, most people quit swimming because they are swimming uphill, and they're like, God, swimming really is hard. But if we can get them to relax with their face looking down, they can get their hips on the surface, and now they're not swimming uphill. That's the magic that the great swimmers have found, and that's the magic that you want everyone to be able to experience. So I think, as a statement product, the fact that we bring, happiness and more swimming to the non-elite, to the 50 or 60 or 70-year-old person, or the 30-year-old person, or anybody, because they're able to put this on and they're able to feel what it's supposed to feel like. So that's a real, I'll call that a success story.
No, that's great, and I think that the interesting part of that education is what it does to your market, right? Because it broadens it beyond, the ultra swimmer. It's not the elite swimmer. It's not even just the average swimmer. It's everybody. Everybody can be now educated into improving their swimming, and in a time where triathlons, half or tris or Ironmans or ultras or whatever that are out there, and more people are jumping in the ocean and swimming, jumping in the pool and swimming. It is to be able to improve that technique and take that strain off the upper body, off the neck, off the back when they're in the middle of an endurance race like that. It's got to be a big boon for you. And it's something so simple. It seems so simple.
It's kind of our mission statement too, is we like to say, let's simplify swimming. There it is.
Oh yeah, there it is on the shirt.
Yeah, but it is about breaking down all the building blocks. I think it's true with every type of business and every type of activity and sport. Like, if we can learn to do that first fundamental well, then we can build upon it. But if you can't, if you aren't getting that first fundamental in place, so with everything we do, we are literally dissecting the swim and saying, is there some way to encourage proper technique in that one aspect of it? And because we teach that technique well enough, people will keep swimming. People will, better technique makes you faster. Better technique keeps you injury safe. Better technique keeps you happy. So it simplifies.
So you just kind of precursed it a little bit for me. Talk to me about some of those building blocks. You mentioned yourself, it's kind of like in business. Give me some of those early building blocks that were revelations for you and Pablo as you started to build this business at year 4, at year 6, at 10, 12, etc.
Somewhere along the way, being 32 years old in business, social media wasn't a thing.
Right.
And somebody told me one day that in the whole product development life cycle, because we knew we never intended to battle the giants. There are giant brands in the industry of swimming that to fight in the red ocean with them would mean you would lose. So how do we find our blue ocean? And if you do find a blue ocean, again, stepping back to pre-social media, somebody told me, they said, if you're going to design something, make every effort to design it so good that people will talk about it. To design something that is anything short of fantastic, nobody's going to talk about it. Nobody talks about something that's good. Oh, I got this. It's good.
Yeah.
You do something and it's really good, people talk about it. And so somewhere along the way, we embrace that, and we really there might come a time someone says, did you overthink those prototypes? We have 100 of them and they look so similar. But when you have something that's so similar, but all of a sudden that little bit just makes a little difference. I mean, talk about a cooking recipe. Everyone can follow the same recipe, but it's what is that one ingredient, the right amount of that one ingredient that just picks it up a notch, and everyone says, oh my gosh, that is so good. And that's what we have to do as a product company ourselves, is make it so that it's so good that somebody's going to tell somebody about it. So I embrace that with product development. I embrace it across the entire company. It just says, look, we won't be able to do everything people ask. And we might fall short sometimes, but whenever given the chance, make the extra effort that people will talk about the experience or the product or what we're doing. So I'm not sure if that specifically keyed in, because you said, what are some of I guess that's one of the things we've embraced is pushing the envelope on high quality to get social currency.
Well, and I think that's good. It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, for years we've been trying to get the right recipes out of my mom, and there's always that little bit of something, that secret thing that she doesn't quite say. It's bad enough that she says, "Oh, take a little bit of this, a little of that, a dash of this, a dash." You can never quite replicate it anyway. And even when you get as close as possible, there's that little bit of something there that's just not quite right.
It's surprising what salt can do.
Oh, it's unreal. It makes such a difference, and she'll never tell you that that's what it is, but eventually maybe you figure it out, maybe you find your own. So the beautiful part about that, though, in a products company is and products education doesn't matter, because there's just that little something that makes you you, and that, as you've found in the past, lends itself to a patented type of style. Whether it's utility, whether it's form, whether it's however you're going to design the patent, you can patent something and push off the competition for a number of years, as you've done. I worked for a while with a pharmaceutical company that, naturally pharmaceuticals are always on patents. And they didn't plan ahead enough for ones that were coming off a patent. And they found themselves in a spot where they had one coming off patent, one that was about a year later coming off patent. Those were major makers for them. And they looked at the pipeline and it was pretty weak at the time. It was a tough time for that company. Tell me how it felt when you started to approach that time of coming off patent. Did you start to get other products on patent, or have you been constantly working that pipeline so that you get this rolling effect of having that edge in at least one or more products? Tell me a little bit about that process.
Sure. I think that's the roller coaster you talked about at the start of the show.
Sure.
It's not always, if you weren't going, you can't go down the hill if you haven't gone up the hill. And we're going to go up the hill and down the hill. So we have had products that we developed to a certain state that we actually chose not to bring to market because it wasn't good enough. Those are painful lessons learned. In the evaluation stage, you try to get to the no as quick as possible. What are all the possibilities for saying no, don't do it? And it's only putting it through some kind of product filter that it checks enough boxes that you say, okay, I think we should. And I think there's a model that says something like, if you really think you should do it, would you be willing to bet your house on it?
Hmm.
If the answer is yes, then you can move on and go, I really do think yes. Then you got to
Yeah.
ask yourself that next big question. If it were only half as successful as what I think it's going to be, should I still do it?
Is it still worth it?
And then you go like, I'm not sure. Then
Yeah.
say no and move on. But if that answer is hell yes, then you're like, gosh, I think we're onto something. So it's finding out the no's. So we have had some products that we brought to market that we thought would be more successful than they were. And those are tough lessons learned too. Where did we go wrong in our thinking about this? And that's where having enough of a base, I think everyone has that first product they have to bring out to market. But if you can have a little bit of something else that allows you to be sustainable, where you're not betting everything on one thing, that would be where we want to be. That would be where we want to have the base, so that we don't get caught up in the storm and lose. Like
Sure.
to all the future entrepreneurs out there, you've heard this saying, but cash is your oxygen. So if you run out of cash, you die. So that's where I think it's important too. When you're spending your own money, you're going to be a lot more thrifty about it than if you're spending someone else's money. Going back a step too, when we talked about making that decision for the quality of the product, I'm a big believer. We are a 97% business to business model. We made that choice because if you really wanted to be a direct to consumer company, then you have to make sure you have an outreach to reach all of those people. And how do we know all of those people? So our brand does have a presence in India. Our brand does have a presence in Indonesia. Our brand has a presence in Korea and Malaysia and Europe, of course. But how is it that our brand has a presence there? It's because we've chosen a partner. So I think, partnerships in business, and you can't sign up for everyone that says, I'm going to do you right.
Right.
You got to, I would rather I'd rather make sure that you build a personal relationship with them. You honestly, if you believe in them and they believe in you and they're going to preach that mission, that's how you're going to get that social currency. So we, equally as important as developing a sound foundation for the product, is making sure you have a distribution network in place that they're going to speak to who you are. So that's just segueing back into the earlier question.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. So take me back a few years. I know, you and I mentioned or talked about a couple of the challenges you faced, COVID, post-COVID. Give me some idea of some of those challenges that you ran into that other businesses might have run into, and or what are you facing today that you may not have expected as well?
COVID changed the revenue model for the company significantly because a lot of pools closed down. In 2019, the UK was probably our second largest market outside of the United States. And when COVID came, they closed all but 4 pools in the entire country for, I think, 14 months.
Wow.
The 4 pools were left open for their very elite athletes that were going to continue to train for the Tokyo Olympics, which were also suspended till 21. So we went from hero to zero. That's a tough one. How do we overcome that? I wanted to hold the core of the company together, but but COVID was a interesting time that, people were pulled for many reasons. We kind of embrace this philosophy in our companies that says family comes first.
Yep.
So if something arises that you have a need for you and your family, then you just need to let us know something has come up with you and your family has a need, and you can just go do it. And if it takes a day or a week or a month, like you've got
Yep.
to take care of that first. And when COVID happened, everyone was in their own state, like everyone was going through stuff. So we had some attrition. We had revenue shortfall. We lost money like most companies.
Sure.
The goal in 2021 was let's try to break even. And we managed to that. And in 2022, we got a little bit back on our feet. We started to make some money again. So the other thing that I noticed during that has taken place in these last couple of years, that with it in social media, I feel that it's a very much a me world. Me, me, me.
Sure.
And I don't think no one's successful on their own. So this me thing is kind of a shame, because I think we should live in a we world. If we live in a we world, we should be giving credit to all those that are helping people be successful. I'm only successful as a business person because all the people that support me in my business. I could not do this alone. So don't put me on a pedestal at all. You can admire the company as a whole, because it is the company that gets it done. But back to that me world is, unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of poor information out there on the web and socially, because somebody can interpret something and they can share it, and if they've got more followers, people might take that as what is real and what is true.
Sure.
And it's not to say that it isn't real or true. They're probably making a good effort to be real and true, but it's maybe, if it's not quite accurate, then it's a little bit misinformed. It's a little bit misleading. And how do we navigate who should be the educator? How do we learn? So I think I use YouTube to learn how to fix something or do something.
Yep.
And yet, just because it has a lot of reviews, is that the right way? So I don't know how we put a filter on it today. So what I choose to look at outside of a how-to video, I do try and go to someone who's been referred to me personally, or for some reason I do believe I can trust what they're saying. And it happens across everything we could think of right now. So I think that's the biggest struggle post-COVID is today. How do we market ourselves? How do we put our brand out in front of the community? And maybe that's where my Ace Hardware model works.
Well,
If I've got the right people who are sharing the knowledge that we're putting out there. But
I think you're right. I think Ace Hardware comes in handy regardless of the perception of those boutique dealers, right? Because a lot of times people say, well, it's so much easier to go to big box stores, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but when there's all this noise out here, and you'll find information and contra information on virtually any product you want, right? Just go search it and you'll see both sides of the coin on anything you find. And when there's that much of it out there, you want somebody you trust that can refer you to the right product, right? And then that's where these boutique ones come from. I came from small town America. Ace Hardware was big for us, right? And Everybody, when my father and I would walk into Ace, everybody knew him. Everybody knew me, right? They were familiar with you, right? They knew where you lived. They knew what the house was like. They knew what the lawn was like. You came in every week for lawnmower parts. They knew the type of lawnmower you had, et cetera, right? Because they know you. These small dealers, these small boutique shops, they get to use, especially the elite swimmers. I can only imagine they get to know these individuals. And when they say, you want to trust this brand, people have to listen, right? It's the old E.F. Hutton commercial, right? When he speaks, people listen.
Yeah. And that's where I would say, how important is it that you know your customers? Because while I can say we're very fortunate to have 3,500 customers around the globe, um, are there 2,000 of them that really preach the message, and are the others
Mm-hmm.
order taker, order makers? And I have
Yep.
seen it where it's a good account of ours. And I know for a fact that when a person comes into that boutique store, that someone would say, we recommend this one. And you can ask that person, why is it that you recommend that one? If you're talking to the general clerk and they say, well, because my manager told me that this is the
Yeah.
one. And then if you dial back to the manager and says, why is it that you recommend that one? And if you know the manager well enough, that manager might say, well, we make our biggest margins on that one. So we do need a filter to identify what is the right one for me, because even at the store level, I think you got to walk in with an open mind, and like certainly we sell a lot online, Amazon. We sell through a third party, so we manage our business on Amazon very well. We manage our Amazon business such that if a person were to be in a store and look at our product and say, gosh, you know what, this looks like a good product, I think I would like to buy it.
Yeah.
If they pulled out their phone and they looked on Amazon, those prices are going to match. And
That's good.
that way they feel comfortable buying it from the store. So I am supporting our stores by maintaining that relationship.
Yep.
But the idea that someone, should we buy a bunch of things online, try them and then return them, or make that decision based on what, right? So that's kind of the educational mystery that I would say is the most important thing to solve for our business and for other businesses in this coming next few years. How do we make sure that our customers have access to good and accurate information so they can make an informed decision?
Gotcha. So we're going to need to wrap up, but before we go, I want from you that top one or two things that you would tell yourself 32 years ago, the 1993 version of John Mix. What are those top two or three things you're telling him about running a business?
Um, have patience. What
Amen.
the approach towards I wouldn't have guessed. Even though I thought we were going to build a business, I didn't know we were going to build a business. And 32 years later, I would be. But I love what I do, right?
Yeah.
So you just don't know. So if you're going to make a commitment to doing something, what's the reason why? Are you doing it to make a buck? Are you doing it because you're wildly passionate and you love it? I think, we've always heard that. Maybe I didn't even know how wildly passionate I would be when I started it.
Sure.
But today, because I am, it's great. I think work with good people. At the end of the day, work with good people, because that can be the difference in your own happiness in the workspace. So find people that you like, that you trust, that have the same core values and beliefs. That would be, and I think as a business, we've done a good job doing that. So am I telling myself, what should I have done differently, or what did we do well? but those would be a couple life lessons to share with the audience today.
Very good. Anything I didn't ask you today that you want to throw at us, John?
No, Russ, I've appreciated our conversation today. I appreciated the conversation we had 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Your perspective on business has been enlightening for me. I made a new friendship with you. When I say work with people that you like and work with people that you trust, I made a new friend with Russ, and so I expect to carry that on beyond this podcast.
No, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate you jumping on with us and sharing your insight.
Thank you.
So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparks something in you, don't just let it sit. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. And if you've got a story to share or you just want to connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy. All right, very good. That's that.